You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. For this episode, I got to meet Felischa Marye, a graduate of the MFA screenwriting program at UCLA, who transitioned into the film industry after a successful career in public relations and integrated marketing in Chicago, where she was born and raised. While still in film school, she sold her first comedy pilot to HBO. She most recently created and produced a raunchy Friends comedy series set in Atlanta called Bigger for BET's new streaming service, BET Plus, with Will Packer producing. Bigger Season 2 is currently in development. And if you ever set up a production with entertainment partners and had the pleasure of interacting with Chase Anthony, you should know he has a starring role in the show, and he is great. I could not be more thrilled for him. Felischa also wrote on 2 seasons of the hit Netflix series 13 Reasons Why. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. And you can listen on Apple Podcasts or all the podcast places. Okay, here's my conversation with Felischa. Have a listen. What do you do?
I am a writer for television officially now.
How does that feel to say?
It feels like I should have some things that go before or after it, but I'm like, no, that is literally it. You don't have to qualify it. You don't have to justify it after you say it. You are a writer. So it feels weird, but it feels weird that I'm not lying or being aspirational. It's literally the truth.
That's awesome. Let's talk about your show, Bigger, on BET.
Yes.
How did that come to be?
Yes, it's called Bigger. BT was talking, coincidentally, when I had a general meeting already scheduled with Will Packer Media. Will Packer is the producer of the show. He was simultaneously, I didn't know this, talking to the head of BT about some sort of reboot almost of like Living Single or some show that's like an ensemble friendship show. And so they moved my general up because they knew I had sold a pilot like in film school to HBO that was kind of a friendship-based pilot in the vein of like Sex and the City. And then I had worked on 13 Reasons Why, which is, essentially about friends as well. So they wanted to talk to me about the idea, and I ended up giving them my take, and they ended up wanting this take. It was initially called Peachtree Place, and it was a broader comedy on regular BET channel. But I was lucky enough, and I say lucky because I definitely come from the streaming world and prefer sort of edgier content. Found out that Peachtree Place would not be on regular BET linear network. It would be on a new streaming network that BET would be launching. And I was super excited about that. And throughout the other pilot, used sort of the same characters, working with the showrunner of that first season, Devon Shepard, redeveloped the first season. Same world of Atlanta, same neighborhood of Little Five Points. And I wanted to talk gentrification similarly, that's a hard word, as with Peachtree Place. I wanted to still address that. So we just sort of took most of the same characters, same world, and just made it an edgier premise. And it's about, these 5 friends in their mid-30s, because that was like the age I was when I sort of hit a early midlife crisis, wondering if there's something bigger and better in life. And sometimes that's technically bigger or better in their sex life, or sometimes that means just, but mostly for the series, it means in their world. Is there something bigger and better, the kind of life they should be living, essentially? So that's the show.
Can we go back to, you sold a pilot to HBO while you were in film school? What?
Yeah, well, how weird. It was, I was at an event, Film Independent had an event for Project Involve, and I was a fellow in Project Involve, and there were executives at the event, and eventually I was sort of looking for the comedy executive, because while in film school, I had just decided to change lanes to television, because I started in 2011 and was all about features. And then realized that TV was blowing up, and then it took for like forever to get a film made. And since this is a second career, I was really conscious of like, I don't have time. I need to like make it now. Like I don't have time to. So I was like, TV feels like I can see my work faster come to screen just because of how it works, and it felt more familiar to me because of coming from like PR and marketing and working on like cross-functional teams, and you're not alone, and it felt like a corporation or a company like working a show. So I got more attracted to TV, but I had like no TV samples yet, really, upon going to this Film Independent event, hoping that this comedy executive would come to this lunch we were attending. And eventually she did. And she sat right next to me at all the tables there. And I'm like, oh, now I gotta Now I got to turn it on and be funny or charming or something. And ironically, I had spec'd Hung, which was a show on HBO at the time. And she kind of made fun of me, like, who specs Hung? Because it had just gotten canceled. And I'm like, thanks for canceling Hung right when I write a spec script. And so that was sort of how we started talking. And I was like, I don't know. I think we're kind of friends. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But the next day she did ask for a sample, and that led to a meeting that eventually led to a pitch. And that's how I got that first script deal. It didn't go. It wasn't greenlit, but obviously it was a great experience. And I wasn't really quite ready for it even. It was kind of overwhelming because it was sort of later on my path in my head. And I was kind of freaked out by it, honestly. But that was the first sort of thing I did that gave me like a sample to go out with.
That's amazing. And what a confirmation of, I think you got the right idea here.
Yeah, no, it was huge. I think the universe gives you exactly what you need to keep going in the right direction. And I think the universe knew that I needed early validation just to give me enough something to keep me going through the years of no validation, which happened after that. The years of, I sold something and now I want to get staffed and it's not so easy. So I needed that little bit to hold on to, I think.
Okay, let's go back to, you started out in PR.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I started out in PR. I was born and raised in Chicago. After coming out of undergrad, first I was an acting major in undergrad. So always attracted to the arts, but always afraid of the arts. Afraid of starvation, afraid of poverty,
Scary.
It's scary. It's scary. If you're familiar with the struggle, which I wasn't familiar with the struggle. I didn't know we were struggling growing up, but it wasn't, we were probably poor, honestly, I just didn't know it, but I knew enough to not want to be it. And so I was very careful about trying to make the right decision so that I'm not putting myself in a financial box of poverty, to be honest. So in the middle of the whole thing, I was like, well, what the hell is acting? Like, how do I live off that? And so I switched to like broadcast journalism just to realize that paid $2 more, but, but it felt kind of like TV, you know what I mean? It wasn't TV, but it was a little more secure. It felt, but it was still, nothing is secure. That's the lesson in life that took me to the mid-30s. Nothing is secure. It feels secure.
Well, if we've learned anything right now.
Oh, hello. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is secure. So do what the hell you want. But I luckily learned to live I lived a life. I lived a job. Living a job or working a job I didn't want to work, or doing something I didn't want to do, gave me plenty of material. Like not having the love you don't want, not having the job you want. Like that not having makes you an amazing writer.
All that good material.
All that good material. All that fear and self-loathing, and you can just use that and it can change everything. But no, I didn't know this, but I needed to live a whole life to be a better writer. I was afraid of being an old writer, but what age gave me was perspective and point of view. So it was helpful.
So what industry were you doing PR for?
It was mostly multicultural marketing, and everything from consumer packaged goods to beauty, usually in the consumer packaged goods. So I wasn't doing publicity for individuals. It was more companies, consumer products.
Okay.
Yes.
And then how did you realize you were a writer?
Well, after years of sort of ignoring this desire to do something in Hollywood, I wasn't sure. Acting, beyond the practicality or lack thereof of being an actress, I was worried that I didn't have the tenacity for acting, like the thick skin, the ability to turn it on and off and not go insane. And like once I realized what it really took to be a good actress, I was like, oh shit, I'm going to be crazy by the end of it.
I had the same exact experience. I was like, this is making me so neurotic and bananas. I can't do it.
Right. So, and I think there's a real thing about, you can have the talent, you can pull it off, but can you live the lifestyle and the process to really do it well? That's why they're good. When they're good, they're good. And I'm amazed by great actors because I'm like, girl, I ain't doing that work. It just made me too crazy. I was way too neurotic and don't take rejection to the physical very well. Like, it's one thing to reject a story on the page or an idea, creative idea. It's one thing to someone look at you from head to toe and go, no, to all of you. You know, that
terrible.
it's terrible.
Something
so
you have no control over.
no, nothing
Not
at
based
all.
on
So
skill,
you always
contribution.
nothing.
Yeah.
No. So though that made me like, yeah, I don't think I will survive this, or I don't think this is fun for me day to day. And something about that, and it wasn't just situational, it was like literally, can I do this? Made me wonder, well, what, because the desire to be in Hollywood and to make films and television never stopped, but I just didn't know what I would do. Like, if it wasn't acting, what would it be? And I don't know when it occurred to me, but I'm like, well, why not writing? I thought directing for a long time. I like applied to film school, like right after undergrad, to Columbia College in directing, and didn't even have a real, like in the interview, I couldn't even give them a real reason I wanted to be a director, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to be in the world. And so, 15 years after that, I said, oh, I've never thought of writing. Why wouldn't I? That's a natural skill for me. I thought that it just always was easier for me to write. I was always good at English and things like that. So I was already in journalism and PR, which is a lot of writing, not the same, but close enough. So I decided to try to teach myself. I went to like a seminar, bought books, and, looked at more commentary to DVD, bonus commentary of movies I loved. And then was like, oh, okay, met someone, wrote a script with her in Chicago. She had written several scripts before, so she was more teaching me. But then it just sort of hit a wall after a number of years, because even if we got, which we did, the script to one person, I got the feeling it was not a one hit wonder, like you get the script and then it gets made, you get the script to someone. I saw that it was a journey, and it wasn't just like a thing that happens. Like you write a script and someone finds it. And so an event, it wasn't an event. It's a journey, and it's ongoing. And so knowing that, I'm like, I can't do this from here. And I'm not writing from Chicago, because I had this whole other life. So eventually, I think my friend was talking about applying to film school. And so I was like, that's a great idea, but I'll do it, because she was applying in Chicago. I'm like, I'll do it in LA. And then that shall move me, and I had this grand plan. And we ended up, long story short, both going to UCLA film school, post 35, mature students, 2 different years, because we influenced each other. I influenced her to apply here. She influenced me to apply in general. And the next thing you know, we both ended up here. So that's kind of how it happened.
Okay, so then you're at the event and you meet the HBO executive. Which HBO executive was it?
It was Amy Gravitt.
Okay, so then after that, did you get one of those development deals, or you just sold your pilot? And it was a pilot deal and then walked away. Okay, so
a script deal. So then I thought, oh, now it's going to be, I was actually a showrunner's assistant at the time when that happened. And I was glad I was an assistant, because it made me, because I was like, why am I doing this, assistant job, and I have this deal? But then I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen with this deal. I'm so young in the game. And sure enough, I found out it didn't go. I am young in the game. And at least at that moment, I was getting assistance. I had an assistant job, or I was still in the game because I was still working on a show of some kind, even though I found out, okay, this won't be a show. And so I was hoping to get staffed right after that. I met to work on some great shows, first season of some great shows that were coming out. That are still out now, that I was excited about. And then I, learned the lesson of, it's really hard to get staffed on your first show, like super hard. And, coming out of film school, having didn't have, like, I was working on that sample. I didn't have like other samples. So I had like a deficit of like samples of my work other than the HBO piece, and some very rough samples from film school. So then I started to have to come up with a second sample that was strong. So eventually I just had to find a job, like after about 6 months, after I found out it didn't go, and I had to find a day job in PR in LA, which I felt like like I was going backwards. Like it smelled like, even though I was lucky to have a job to pay bills, that I could disappear from, it wasn't great. It was very stressful to disappear from a day job to take meetings, writers' meetings, but everything had worked out. Again, the universe wanted it to happen. Every boss kept quitting over me, so I never had any real supervision, and I kept having to say, no, I don't want to be my boss in my, I don't want a promotion.
I don't want that job. I'm not trying to be here.
I kept having to do that, and literally till 2 years in, or a year and a half in, working this day job. I was about to get promoted. They finally were just going to make me do it, basically. And I was waiting on a call about 13 Reasons Why, and I couldn't get in touch with the agent. And I had to turn down this promotion. Like, I had to say this whole speech. It's like something made me have to say this, claim it again to the universe before it was given to me. So I had to have this whole speech about going part-time. If I'm not able to go part-time, then I'm going to have to leave this job, because I did not come here to be a PR person. I came here to be a writer. I had to give that whole speech knowing that my agent, we were playing phone tag. And I had this review with my boss at this day job. So I had to slide the papers back to her after she offered the promotion, say the speech, and put a big period at the end. And then she was like, well, I'll talk to the owner and we'll see if we can get you part-time. But I understand, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as we parted, I got a call that I got staffed.
Oh.
I know. That was like,
so relieved.
I know. It was like, oh, God. And so then I had to call right back. Like, remember that part-time? I won't be coming back, period, because there's no notice. And everybody was great about it because they knew of the opportunity. But yeah, no, it happens like that. And I feel like throughout, you're always sort of pushed to reclaim because you can get lost on this journey. Even after having a show, you can be like, well, what now? Who am I? Like, what? Especially when something throws you off. You don't know, oh, I have a show now. Oh, shit. Well, now who am I? Like, what do I do next?
Yeah.
What do I... And the worthiness and the all the things that writers battle anyway, just naturally, to be sensitive, feeling people, it can make our journey harder. And so sometimes, and for me, it's helpful when life makes me reclaim what I want, to remind me why I'm here. Otherwise I'll get lost.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Out loud?
Are you sure? Yeah.
Do you do this thing that I do, which is do you still have in the back of your mind, like, well, if this all goes to hell, I can still go do PR? Like,
I try not to think that.
Have you let that go?
I let it go only because I'm afraid of the thought. I'm afraid that the thought will make me ease up in any, in one direction. And that's frightening to me. The idea of, like not getting the other. If I make a plan B very clear as a plan B, then I might choose it. I don't think I'll choose it, but I might not do something knowing I could fall safely or something. And that scares me.
Be careful what you visualize.
Yeah. Be careful what you visualize. And if I visualize going back to it, it's so it leaves such a bad taste in my mouth that it really isn't an option. It sounds miserable. Yeah, it sounds miserable.
Okay, so then you got the 13 Reasons Why show. How long were you on that?
I was on that for 2 seasons. I was on seasons 2 and 3. I almost got on one. This is like I said, almost got on some great shows first season. It's just, the number of writers in these rooms are so small. And when there's to enter a room that's small, like Atlanta, first season, 6 writers. It was, very hard. Like, I was getting close on shows and not quite. And so I almost got on 13 Reasons Why. I was acting funny in my day job, damn near. I bought a new laptop. Like, I was acting like I had the job already. I was so sure. And it was like, oh, I didn't get it. And so they did get me in the next season.
And what was that experience like?
Oh, it was great. It was, to me, my education. It's really the basis from which I work today, because it's the only other show I've worked on. I've worked in a mini room on a show that was being considered for pickup for Amazon with Marjorie Lewis Ryan, who now has created and rebooted The L Word. I've been in a mini room with her, which was great, but that was like a 10-week or 8 to 10 week room. But in terms of a show that aired, that's the only show I've worked on. So literally it was all my education in terms of how a room works. And it was great because there wasn't a lot of hard hierarchy on who speaks. And so, if it was one of those big rooms that on a broadcast for a broadcast network, I hear where the staff writer says one good thing a day or something. I don't know that I would have stood out in that kind of environment because I'm not a one thing a day kind of girl, and I'm not that young, you know what I mean? Like, so, I was glad to be in a room where it felt like everybody had the opportunity to make a contribution, a significant contribution, and where there was a lot of trust, no matter what your level is. That was helpful because it allowed me to build some confidence and skill in a safe environment, on a good show, on a show that had attention.
So then your next show is a show you created.
Yes. That's why I said sometimes you have to recalibrate to say, wait, what? You know what I'm saying? Because
that's fast.
Yeah. That's very lucky. And yeah, so I have to say, okay, what do I want? And reimagine who I can be once you get a thing, you're like, okay, so now what?
Now the dream can be bigger.
Right. Now, exactly. And that's another concept of bigger, because I think when you do go after your dreams, the next thing is you're always called a task to get bigger than that, and that can take some adjustment. Because if you're just getting over the imposter syndrome of where you are to get bigger, like, it's just, it's a great blessing to have and worry to have, but it is a lot.
It's a quality problem. It's a quality thing to go to therapy over.
Exactly. It's a lovely problem. Lovely problem.
So how have you calibrated your dream?
I'm still doing it. I'm still trying to, because there are assignments that come, or opportunities that come at you to develop things that are already sort of conceived. They're your own ideas that you can start. There are other people's ideas you can start to develop. And so for me right now, I'm okay, let me react to the things that really feel like me, an extension of who I am, if I'm going to answer or be a part of a pitch of something existing. But when it comes to what I create out of thin air on my own, it's really, I'm really trying to hone in on what the feedback is on my show, as well as what I loved about it myself, like what my brand is. So I know what it is, but I'm making sure that I'm not limiting. I'm trying to measure it against what's out there now. And, it's just sort of okay, so what would make sense for me to do next? Or what would I want from me if I was my fan? You know what I mean? Like, what would I? Yeah. And so I'm asking and I don't have all the answers yet. That's the beauty of it. As I'm taking pitches and that sort of thing, I'm sort of figuring out, okay, so I'm probably should write more in the vein of this and not why I struggle here and not there. I'm still learning myself as a writer. That's probably part of it, why it's more of a process, because I'm new as well.
Yeah, it seems like a delicate balance between taking every opportunity that comes at you and protecting your voice and your brand and what you want to do. Because once you have all that, there's not going to be enough time in a day or in a year to do everything you want to do.
Exactly.
So what keeps you kind of centered and grounded in that?
I feel like therapy is helpful. I feel like life's coaches. So whether that's a therapist, a personal trainer, because I feel like a lot of, even though a personal trainer is supposed to help me with physical stuff, I feel like, she's in my head a lot. My therapist is in my head a lot. Other people need to be in this crazy place. So that helps.
You have a team.
I have a team. And I'm not usually that person with the team. I'm usually the figure it out on my own. That helps. What are you going to ask?
Do you have a mentor?
I feel like not an official mentor. I have had more official mentors, like the WGA gives you a mentor. And so I just sort of use people that and I shouldn't say use, leverage relationships. Receive the gift of mentorship when I'm just getting it by chance of, like, I feel like a showrunner mentored me in many ways, the showrunner for Bigger Season 1. And because that's a veteran writer who is African-American, who's worked in the business a long time. So there's a lot to learn from him. I find like I met a screenwriter that lives in my building who was a screenwriter that I looked up, Tina Andrews, before I even moved here, who wrote like What's Love Got to Do with It. And, when I was looking up like African-American female writers years ago, when I first said I would be a writer. And
she's in your building?
And she was in my building. Yes. Isn't that crazy?
Amazing.
Yes. And so it was I'm just randomly talking to this woman, and it's her. And I'm like, oh, wait, I know exactly who you are. And so... And, I didn't say be my mentor, but, the questions I asked because I want to know, how does she have a career this long? You know what I mean? So not officially, but unofficially.
Yeah. Do you run your writer's room?
Yes. In season 2, I'm the showrunner. Mm-hmm.
Oh, great.
Yes.
So how are you doing that? How do you look at it? How deliberate are you being about how you're going to run that room?
Oh yeah, I was really freaked out by it because because Devon mostly ran it the first season, and I was more observing and leading the ideation as well, co-leading it, but definitely not leading the running of the room. So that's the only thing that feels hard to control completely. Like you have some sort of game plan or map of what you're going to do, but at the end of the day, it depends on how the ideas come out. There's not a lot of control. You can't predict. So because of that, I was very nervous, and not until a writer told me later, like, no, it was pretty good. No, you do it well. We're taking notes, or something. She said, we're taking notes. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that was like the first week. That was literally a surprise to me. I had no idea that they were buying it. But after, but then I realized it's like a big brainstorm. I mean, and there's no way to overly control it. I do realize, I've experimented with over controlling it and and letting it just happen. And I think I do prefer some real planning at the top of it, but letting the ideas happen as they will. So it's, and Devon said you will find your style. And I just wanted to be told what style to have. Like, I'm like, well, I don't want to find a style. I want to know. But at the end of the day, it's people. It's, that strike of being open, but being decisive. It depends on the day. Doing it over Zoom was more difficult, I must say, because the quarantine happened maybe the last 3 weeks of our room, 3 to 4 weeks. Luckily, we had most of the stories up to maybe episode 7 already figured out by then, broken by then. But so we had to come up with like episodes 8, 9, and 10, in a virtual environment, which energetically for a comedy room is weird. So hard. That's the only time it got harder to me, just because it's harder to, I realize comedy rooms are very energy based. It's not just story based. It's energy, funny, mood based. And so that became difficult.
I imagine that was exhausting too.
Yeah,
to try to keep up that energy.
I know, it's very hard.
Because I know just corporate Zoom calls are killing me.
I know.
I can't imagine trying to be in a comedy
Be creative,
room.
Right? And people said, "Oh yeah, with this happening, Zooms could probably happen, from here on out with rooms." But I think there's something different about like just being each other's presence and ideation happening through people physically being in the same room. That energy creates a velocity or a momentum of ideas in a way that doesn't really happen on Zoom to me.
Yeah, energy is a real thing.
It's a real thing. People got to respect it.
It's a real thing. Are you assigning out episodes to other people?
Yes.
Are you doing the final draft on them? How much hands-on of the writing are you doing?
It's a lot of hands-on. It's passes on every script. I do believe in collaboration, and I'm like, you have a writer's room so they can write episodes. Like, I can't even imagine having to write every episode. So, like, the first season I wrote 3. I wrote the first episode, the flashback episode, and then I co-wrote the finale with the showrunner. And this year I wrote the premiere episode. I'm writing the finale, and everything else is written by the writer's room. Devon stayed on as consulting producer this time, so he has an episode. But I like that because to give people a chance to sort of, there's ownership. There's just not like I'm sitting in a room giving you ideas if they know they're writing an episode. And, having to do a pass on everyone's episode. I mean, we did it to a degree this year, but with us not co-show running, it's more, it falls on me, a little bit more than last year, just because day to day, I'm the head of the ship day to day. So it's definitely, depending on the heavy lifting, just depends on the script and what's happening in the script and how much I have to do, but definitely a pass on each draft. So it feels like it's weird because you're trying to be nice. You try to be
right.
like, but you also it has to sound like you, it has to sound like your show, it has to sound like your characters in a way that, so, that's another thing about being a grown up you have to be a grown up as a showrunner because you have to be able to make tough decisions that may hurt feelings, or make people feel a certain way.
It's so many more skills than writing, it sounds like. And now you're also in a position of, I guess, if you choose to, helping other people with their careers and helping to grow them as you're figuring out how to be a leader.
I know.
And run the ship. How's that?
At least I feel like I in film school got attracted to TV because of that element is something transferable from just corporate America or from team building and leadership in a corporate world. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of once you're at a certain level, your job isn't just your job anymore. Your job is to find talent, groom talent. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff that used to annoy me even in the corporate side because I'm like, I just want to do my job. I'm not trying to worry about. But
that is your job.
But that is my job, and the beauty of it on the corporate side, I didn't see the beauty of it because I didn't want that thing as much. Right? I didn't want the VP title as much as when I got it as much as you would have thought. But so me growing someone to VP, I'm like, yeah, that's great because that's what you want. But it's not. So it's very different. We're growing. Like I know what this dream feels and tastes like. Whether you're an actor and want to be a successful actress or a writer or director, I like anything in this area. I know what this dream feels like. So helping anyone get closer is way more fulfilling just because it's the same dream or it's a similar dream. And I didn't even it attracted me to television, but then I forgot about that as a bonus benefit. The fact that you can make other people's dreams come true until it's happened. And I saw one of the actors from the show who plays Vince, the DJ that is kind of stuck in the past. He's also on Insecure. And when he got this booking, he on his Instagram, he put it on his Instagram. He got the phone call. And it just chokes everybody up. It's so cute and adorable and heartwarming when he gets the call and you're just thinking, okay, I'm casting a show. But until you see that video, you're like, oh, fuck, I'm making people's dreams come true. Like, as my dream, like how beautiful. Like I didn't, you just don't really, I didn't think about when you're in, that's what I mean. You have to recalibrate all the time because when you're in it, it's just going and you're not putting in perspective. And because I'm already seeing him on Insecure, he's already slightly famous to me anyway. Like, more famous than I am. Like, so the idea that I gave him a job and it brought him to tears it was a crazy thing that I had to wrap my head around. And so those were the little bonuses that I didn't factor in because it was all about me, of course, and pursuing this dream. But then
it's just getting your job done. I mean, you got to cast the thing.
Right, exactly. But then this bonus of like other people get to experience glory of, according to what they want in their life is amazing.
I mean, how thrilling.
Yeah, it is. It is special.
I mean, that's why everyone loves American Idol. Like since the beginning,
oh my God.
You get to watch someone the moment their dream comes true.
And I mean, America's Next Top Model, I used to always be a big fan of that, like those competition shows like that, where there's this dream. I'm a sucker for it.
And now you get to do it.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's what a blessing. Absolutely.
It's so great. All right. Tell me how it has been for you to be a Black woman in this business that is so tough if you are not a white guy.
Oh, wow. I feel like the brunt of what that's going to look like, I haven't even felt yet, meaning I see it everywhere. But because I've worked on one show that happened to have a diverse room, Brian Yorkie hired diverse writers for those seasons. And there were 3 Black people the first season, not like 9 writers, 3 Black people. That's doing pretty good.
That's great.
2 Black women and a Black man. In the following year, a Black man and 2 Black people on the second season, including myself. And they were both women, but then other people of color, in that same room. So, my point is, this is a showrunner who obviously found having a diversity in the room to be important, but I think I hear more through, I'll say this. Before I was even staffed and trying to find a manager or production, it was basically a producer manager I was going to work with. It was pretty big, but and it was like, that would have been a dream. Like, oh, that's great. This is like the management company I've had my eyes on. And we were going to develop something together, and it was a comedy, and it was just, not a comedy. Well, yeah, it was a comedy, a broad comedy kind of, that we talked about developing together. And right when I was walking out, he was like, make sure to put the pain of a Black woman in it. Now, he's a white man. And I thought we understood what the idea was. And there was no pain of a Black woman in the idea. I didn't understand what that even meant. Now, if he would have said any nuances of being a black, that okay, I get that. That's just nuance. But pain in this idea, I didn't. If it was assuming a thing, I knew it was going to be a problem, right? So I never really followed up with them. Today my manager is a black woman, but it's not just because of that, but it's a lot because of that. Because I just felt like the person, your manager, is the person who's in the trenches with you most often, more than your agent, and they're helping you develop things. And if someone is going to put on me some assumption of pain with no real context of like, what do you even mean by that? Like, I could just tell that's going to be a problem. So beyond the getting of the jobs, which, I hear from being in the committee of Black writers, the Writers Guild, and my friend that I said we moved here and went to UCLA together, she penned an open letter to Hollywood, Michelle Moore, as well as her vice chair and co-chair of the committee of Black writers for the Writers Guild, this open letter to Hollywood, one of the first ones that caused all the sort of commotion, because it talks about, so I'm very aware of the hiring issue, white male showrunners, their worlds just not being, social worlds not being big enough to, or not including Black people. So if you hire who you trust, you hire who you know, and so then it just ends up being conveniently white. So I know that as a problem, but I think another problem is once you get the writer in the room, whether it's the writer's room, whether you're the manager with a new client, if you're putting your idea of Blackness onto that Black person, you might as well have hired your white friend. You know what I mean? And and so some people check the box and then don't listen to you, or they're putting their own thing on it. And not that every experience of Blackness is one way and one person can own it, but they certainly have a better idea of what it is than a non-Black person. So I feel like I'm saying all this to say is I see there's a hiring problem, but then I also see once people are bold enough to hire or to work or to pick up that new client, they have to be quiet.
Yeah.
When it comes to what they hire that person for, and trust that they're not trying to control your creative, or they're not trying to not have you collaborate if you're the manager helping them develop the piece, but they want to be free to be honest and not afraid to not meet your expectation of Blackness. It's hard enough to try to meet Black people's expectation of Blackness. Now I'm trying to satisfy a white person's expectation of Blackness is false.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here we are sitting in the middle of COVID. It's July. I'm going to say that because I don't know when it's going to come out. So we have COVID happening. We have Black Lives Matter happening in a way that we haven't seen it happen in ever, maybe.
Yes, ever.
What are you making of this moment?
I don't know if I'm an optimist, but I smell change a-coming. And I did say a-coming.
I love it.
Yeah, I feel it's
different,
happening.
Right?
Yeah, it feels different. I mean, we weren't, most of us, if alive, period, but probably not even alive when, in the late 60s when that was happening. But just looking at the footage, there's only we were only allowed to be so angry, and we were pretty damn angry, and white people were only allowed to be so angry, and they were pretty damn angry at the time, helping us. But now there is, and it's coupled, or it's topped off with who's in the White House, but the level of rage against the machine, so to speak, or rage against what the, you know what I mean, is at an all-time high. And it was the perfect storm of COVID. We can't turn our heads. We can't be overly busy and ignore it. We have to sit and watch George Floyd get murdered on camera over and over again. If we could stomach to watch it, because we're at home with nothing distracting us from the truth that is hard for this country to swallow, which is founded on horrendous racial ideals, and those same ideals are trying to keep this country alive because this country thinks it lives off of, or that this hate or this hierarchy is what makes this country work. There's a belief at a very sort of basic level that without